The cold was the first thing I felt. Even before my eyes were open, I felt a very deep chill in my core. 1,000 spindles of ice sewn between my tissue. I blinked, my eyelids slowly bringing and stealing back the darkness, and with it, the desire to keep them closed forever. I was lying face down on the floor, the tiles speckled with brown blood. I moved my arms to push my face up, but my muscles were stiff, almost too stiff to bend without breaking. I feebly pushed myself up, forcing weight upon deadened legs. I began to wonder why I felt the way I did. I wasn't sure how long I'd been laying there. There was the most peculiar feeling in my stomach, a sort of dissolution. Perhaps I had ingested something that knocked me out. Wait, where was I? I looked around the room I was in. It was a kitchen. Mostly everything was in order, except for the few traces of a hurried exit. The back door was open, barely bolted to the top hinge. Cabinet doors were left open, and it seemed only the food readily edible was taken. A knife set was knocked over, with a few blades missing. There was blood splattered on the floor, in which I was laying. I could see a putrid steam of it running down my shirt, but after a quick search I didn't find or feel any wound. Each window I saw had the blinds drawn and the lights turned off, as if the house's occupants were trying to hide. I went into the living room, barely bending my brittle knees into an awkward walk. It was dark, but I could see outlines of furniture well enough. There was nothing out of the ordinary, except that the front door had been barricaded with a desk. There was a bedroom towards my right, the door closed, and then a hallway near the front door. The entire house was dark and empty, except for me. Where was I? Whose house was this? And then I realized I didn't know who I was. I thought and thought and thought upon it, trying to bring up some memory of a name, a friend, an activity, my face. I didn't even have a vague image of my own face, and the feeling of facelessness was eerily disconcerting. Trying to access my own convoluted memory banks, I realized I couldn't remember anything other than the cold of waking up on that kitchen floor. I slowly became more and more sure that I had been poisoned. Perhaps it had been an allergic reaction. What makes one amnesic and unconscious? It had to be some sort of chemical. What if I lived alone? I checked for a wallet in my pocket, but I found none. I tried to call out, but something was very wrong with my voice, as it felt and sounded like my vocal cords were shredded. The only thing to come out was some sort of strangled noise, mixed with a phlegmatic sputter. I spat out a glob of blackish red blood caught in my throat. I couldn't taste it, but it looked disgusting on whoever owned the couch in front of me. Since no one had responded to my vocalization, I decided to leave. Going to the front door, I pulled the heavy desk aside. It was difficult, not because of the weight, but because of my limbs. My arms felt encumbered by hundreds of pounds, and the rest of my body had been struck by some sort of torpor, like it was being pulled towards a supermassive black hole in the opposite direction I tried escaping to. Trying to grip the hulking piece of furniture was difficult as my fingers wouldn't cooperate. But the desk gave way easily, more easily than I thought it would. I'm not sure how long I spent trying to open the door. Time seemed different. I couldn't tell you how long a moment was, as I was completely grounded in the present. Trying to recall waking up in the kitchen was slowly becoming more difficult. After what could have been hours of failing, I orchestrated all of my fingers together into a twisted motion, and I opened the door. The difficulty of something seemingly simple perplexed me, but I lost interest and soon forgot about it. I had heard of concoctions that paralyze, but were there some that cause memory loss as well? I knew of the Haitian zombies that had forgotten themselves entirely and served whatever voice they had heard after resurrection, but there was no voice to command me. My experience wasn't quite as dramatic, but someone's blood was in the kitchen. Maybe I survived an assassination. I had been subdued on purpose, and I could still feel the results of my rigid muscles. But if amnesia was an intended side effect, what would someone stand to gain from it? I walked out the door into a suburban neighborhood, trying to figure this conundrum out. The sky was overcast and grey, a constant threat of some sort of foulness to rain from the heavens. The wind was strong, blowing various trash and debris down the street. I could see black smoke on the horizon, rising up to coalesce with the dark clouds. Step by step, I moved the desiccated feeling body I was in down the driveway. I didn't see a single person, just signs of exodus. Front doors were broken down or left open, windows smashed, burnouts from tires throughout the street, and the strange feeling of not being alone. I could sense someone was around. I could hear their heartbeat. I could feel their warmth. I needed to find them. I needed to know what was going on. Someone would help me, I was sure. A too thick saliva began to form in my mouth, a very foreign saliva. I spit, a purple slime tinged with red hitting the ground, along with something white, the purging of toxin. So I began to walk. I made horrible progress, walking down the street on a pair of dead legs. I didn't mind it though. I was lost in a sort of mindless, not uncontent to just be wandering. The whole time the possibility of other people probed my brain, insisting I find them. Walking down a street through the eternal maze of neighborhood, I came across a dog, a big Doberman. At first, he caught my attention in an interested way. I looked at him, enthralled. But then he caught a glimpse of me and started barking. The barking became louder and louder. I began to grow irritated. The way the dog stared at me, fangs bared, caused my reservedness to subside. I could feel the fury cauterizing my body, crawling up my spine, making my hands shake. This animal was challenging me, my Ray. I strode over to him, oblivious to the deep growling. The dog readied himself to pounce, and the thought of this pathetic thing posing a challenge was amusing. He jumped forward, biting into my calf, hard enough to cause a crunch to sound. But I was so full of rage, so full of hatred that my whole body was numb. I threw myself upon the dog, wrapping my hands around his neck tightly. I slowly began to twist my iron grip with as much power as I could muster, and nothing in the world could stop me from breaking his neck. He managed to whimper in such a saddening manner. If I could feel sorrow, it would have hurt me inside. So I made it excruciating for the dog, finally breaking his neck. His head was twisted 180 degrees. Then I picked up his corpse, slammed it into the street, and started punching in his ribcage, grinding his flesh and innards against the cement with my fists, until just his head and hind legs remained intact, connected together by a spine and fur matted with the dog's bloody remains. When I was done, I asked myself what I had just done. I now felt nothing. I was calm. I was collected. My mind analyzed the situation and deduced anger was a fair reaction, though I had a subconscious feeling that what I had just done was sickeningly wrong. What if I had brain damage? I heard a story of how a man had brain damage in a specific area, which caused him to fly into a blind fury at the slightest thing. What if it happened to me? Enough oxygen deprivation could cause both brain damage and unconsciousness. Was I even mentally fit to be a human being anymore? I needed to find someone quickly. I continued on, eventually reaching the end of the neighborhood. 2 cars were crashed into each other, and I walked up to them. One was empty, while the driver of the other car was resting his head on the steering wheel. I walked over, opening the door and lifting his head up by the hair. His forehead was caved in, pieces of skull broken off in his brain. He didn't smell particularly good, so I picked him up and threw him onto the street. I sat in the car, looking at it. I was sure I'd driven cars many times before, but as I sat in that seat, I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do. I grabbed the wheel, turned it. Nothing happened. There were a ton of buttons next to the wheel, and I began pressing them. One of them made a terrible noise come on, and after forgetting which one it was, I left. I was on a main street. There were parked cars in the lots out front of derelict shopping centres. The occasional signs of violence streaked upon the pavement or wall in a bloody fashion. The lights of miscellaneous shops were still on, though I could see no one inside. Automated traffic lights went through their cycles, unaware that they did nothing to serve the people who weren't there. The place was a ghost town, void of anything that might be alive. Then I saw someone. I was in front of a grocery store, the entrance destroyed by a car. The person I saw appeared to be a man. He limped, and it seemed like every time he put weight on his right leg, it would almost snap out from underneath him. He was making his way into the apartment complex from the other side of the street. I tried yelling out to him, but all I could make was a groan. He continued onto the complex grounds, and I decided to follow him. When I passed the surrounding fence, however, I saw a group of people running up a flight of stairs into an apartment. One of them was holding a gun towards the man trying to follow, who seemed to beseech something of them by holding his arms out. From the look of it, he needed medical aid. And then they shot him. I immediately took cover behind the fence, peeking around the corner. The last person to go in was a woman, who made the strangest feeling rise in my chest. I took a look at her as she stared into the corpse of the man her friend had just shot. She couldn't see me, however, and went inside. There was something peculiar about her. She contorted my chapped lips into a goofy semi-grin. I had a feeling like I knew her, like I needed to know her again. Perhaps she could help me sort this whole mess out. Maybe I could find out who I once was. But I wasn't going to be able to approach them if they were just shooting random people. I made my way towards the grocery store. My muscles began to grow flexible, and I could move a bit more smoothly now. Though the calf the dog had bitten wasn't as strong as my uninjured one. I began to hope that whatever chemical was in my system was starting to wear off, and that there might not be a permanent effect after all. I walked through the parking lot. The place was abandoned, though it didn't seem voluntarily. Some of the cars were open, some were painted red. One trunk was open, half filled with groceries and a carton of eggs smashed upon the concrete next to it. Dozens of carts were left astray. The car that had rolled over and smashed the glass doors leading into the grocery store. It appeared the car was resting upon a few people, their blood and organs forced out of their bodies all over the cement. The wind blew. It was cold. I got to the dumpster behind the store and opened it up. I grabbed a piece of cardboard, and underneath it was a small child. Face gnawed until it was unrecognizable. I could see the bone of the nose, though the cartilage was gone. There was an ear spat out next to his head. The lips were eaten in a particularly vicious way, exposing mashed-in teeth and purple gums. The eyes had been slurped out, leaving this 8-year-old child staring into the sky with a lifeless gaze. The skull was smashed in, and the brain was served at a 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. The body had pieces picked off of it in varying degrees, in some places to the muscle, in others to the bone. This was the work of something wild, something extremely ferocious. The child was small enough to be easy meal for a pack of starving dogs. There was even a news report about something like this. Cases a few months ago. Wasn't there? Or did it seem like something that would be on the news? Regardless, I reached my hand into the emptied stomach, digging up past the remains in search of wet blood. After getting some, I wrote, "I am not an enemy. Don't attack," on the cardboard. The body gave off a foul stench, and it wasn't the sight so much as it was the scent that deterred me. It wasn't decomposition, but there was something definitely wrong with the corpse. So I left, utterly forgetting the small child. I arrived back at the opening of the apartment complex. The door the group had entered was shut tight. I waited, not sure how long it was, but completely content with passing the time doing nothing. Then I thought it would be better to see them coming before they could see me. So I took my sign and went to the cemetery across the street from the apartments, where I would be able to properly observe them. Night came. Everything was quiet. Not a single car passed. No one walked along the sidewalk. There wasn't a single person out picking up food, visiting the grocery store, or renting a movie. Orange glows on the horizon kept me company. Anything that a human being might once do was never to be done again. I lay there, silently watching, alone in a yard full of corpses. I had the same sensation I had in the neighborhood I woke up in, that there were people around. I knew I could feel the ones in that apartment, so I waited for them. The only uncomfortable part was the cold. I couldn't get warm at all. I wished my body would metabolize whatever is inside me. I just wanted to feel all right again. I was slowly beginning to forget what exactly I needed metabolized from my body. Was it something bad? It couldn't be, as I felt perfectly fine. I had the vague feeling that I should wait for the people who went into the house. Maybe that woman I saw could tell me what I needed out of my system. I spent the night next to the grave of Chris Redfield. Then day came. It seemed slow, but I couldn't be sure. My mind was only conjuring up blanks when I tried accessing the last few hours' images. The clouds stayed, like a dark harbinger hiding whatever might be bright, whatever was left that could be warm, if there was anything that could make me warm again. Finally, I saw them come out again. A few, including the woman. I made as much haste as I could, holding up my sign, until I caught one of their eyes. It was a man, thin, gaunt, bones quite prominent, like an undead skeleton. He had a handgun, and as soon as I came into vision he pulled it up, aiming at me, yelling out a warning. The other two looked at me, and the woman I had seen gasped. I got a better look at her. She was beautiful, even angelic. Blonde hair with a very light colour, green eyes, the colour I imagine Mother Nature herself might have. I could see an aura around her of a bright white. I saw it shoot towards me, and I instantly soothed. My leg felt all right. My spirit was healed. My being rejuvenated. I loved her, and I'm sure I loved her even more back before, when I knew who I was. She looked at me, mouth agape, expression stunned. The skeleton covered in flesh took a step forward, but she stood in front of him. I held out my sign, and she read it. I could see a tear run down her face. They muttered a conversation to each other, but the man let me continue on. "No, how can you trust him?" the man yelled, as the woman I loved started walking towards me. "We're going back right now, with or without you." And the other two started running back up the stairs. They meant nothing to me, however, so I didn't care. I dropped the sign. This woman, a complete stranger to me, yet so familiar, I felt that if I lost her now, I would lose my entire life. She came closer and stopped. "Is that you?" she whispered. "Yes," I managed to articulate with difficulty. For this woman I could remember nothing. This woman that I loved, I would do anything. She walked up to me. I extended my arms to embrace her. And when she fell into them, I ripped her fucking throat out. The flesh in my mouth 1 second and swallowed in the next. She started choking on blood, trying to scream and failing, falling to the concrete. She was mute, the same way I was. I got down onto my knees, making a fist and smashing through her ribcage to get the best tasting organs. I broke the skin, broke bones, gripped her heart, ripped it out and started savoring it. I had no idea why I was doing any of this, as I was now a mere victim of my instincts. This drive took over my hands and jaws, this inherent rage encoded within my existence. I now knew the purpose of my existence. The only thing I loved right now was the way her flesh tasted, the first thing I had been able to taste in so long. It had the perfect texture, the right amount of chewiness, and the blood was perfect, a perfect complement. I felt an elation. I felt an amazing high I had never known as I consumed her carcass. I felt a tooth get stuck in a particularly calloused piece of meat, but I swallowed it anyway. I would regret this later, if I could still regret. If I could still regret, I might regret that after I had my fill, this woman was going to get up, only to suffer the same bewilderment and estrangement from reality as I had. I might regret that I was purposely going to let her reanimate, so that she could go infect others. I might regret the deaths of the others she would eat. I might regret letting the corpses of children be thrown into dumpsters after her victims did their part to spread this disease. If I could still regret, if I even cared to regret, I might regret succumbing to the results of my twist of fate. I am now the plague bearer. I am now the one I used to despise in movie horrors. I am the downfall of my former race. I am the apocalypse. And then I began to feast.